This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. So I just wanted to start by thanking everybody who's taken the time out today to join us on this webinar. Thanks to all our Thunder Seed dealers for the support. Hopefully this is informative for everybody. Our goal with this webinar was we do get some questions once in a while on Lallemand products, especially with the soybean stuff being new. And then also on the forage side, there's some growers definitely using your products and just want to try and maximize what our corn silage can do in a pile. So hopefully by learning more about forage inoculants as well and when to use them when maybe we don't need to or what products, this is going to help everybody out. And with Alexis being one of our fantastic dealers and the guru of corn silage, I go to her a lot. So I think it should be a good hour here. So, and with that, I'll pass it on.
Thank you for you and your group. Thanks for joining us. Just a word of thanks for getting everything together. That's always the trick to get the audience and get the guys to put some time aside to have a webinar. I know everybody is these days are bombarded with a lot of webinars and information, and ditto to you and your group once again. I'm not going to be long, as you guys are all received. Most of you have received our little bit of invite with our two presenters. The first presenter will be Brenton Belos from our plant care unit. He joined the company in 2020. Don't work with him directly, but what I heard is a phenomenal guy, very informative, know the business. So we're looking forward to hear from him. He will be our first speaker. As for our second speaker, Dr. Renato Schmidt, I had fortunate enough to work with him over the last few years, and just not just research and scientific background, but a hands-on on the practical side as well. So yeah, thank you both. Thanks for taking the time to work with us. We're looking forward to hear more from you guys. So Bentos, we're looking to hear from you first.
Thank you very much, Tanis, and thank you for everyone for taking the time to jump on the webinar here. I'm sure everyone's a little bit worn out from watching these, but we've got some great products to review here on the soybean side, and of course I know on the silage side. Again, two different business units in Lallemand here, but I've heard great things about the silage inoculant, so I'm looking forward to watching that presentation as well. So yes, thank you, Tanis. I'm Brenton Belos. I'm with Lallemand here. I've been with the company since March of 2020. So right at the start of the pandemic for Canada here. So I actually haven't met really any of my colleagues. It's quite remarkable what we could do with technology these days. And of course, you're watching my screen here, which is great. So just a quick review of our sales team in Canada here for Lallemand Plant Care. That's for the inoculant side on soybeans, peas, and lentils. Scott Gray is commercial manager for Canada. He's been with the company for a number of years now. And we really just started to develop this sales team in Canada here over the last year and a half, 2 years. Chris Zemlak is in Saskatchewan. He's actually on the call here with us today. He's been with the company for almost 2 years now, I think, and so he's a great resource to have on the team. That star in the middle there, that's a lab we have in Saskatoon where we do a lot of compatibility testing with some other products on the market. Justin McNally, technical rep. He's technical rep for Western Canada. He's out of Calgary. Another great resource. Matt Farr as well, another technical rep out of North Dakota. Again, I haven't been able to meet these guys yet, but looking forward to in the next little while here. And then, so just to point out the two other stars on the map there, we have a plant in Sault Ste. Marie where all of these soybean inoculants and pea inoculants are developed in Ontario there, and then our head office is in Montreal. So I'm going to focus on soybeans here. We do have a pea and lentil inoculant lineup, but I'll save that for another day here. So we'll get right into it. So I'll be roughly 30 to 40 minutes talking about soybean inoculants here. Hopefully I don't go on too much of a rant here. So we have a brand new spherical granule product that we've developed here, and this past spring was the first year that we had the product to launch in Western Canada. About 500,000 acres went down into the ground between peas, lentils, and soybeans, and we haven't had a single complaint about it, which is quite remarkable. So typically what there is in the market is a peat-based granule, a clay-based granule, and then we have our own proprietary spherical granule here. So what this is a dual strain Beta Rhizobia japonicum species of rhizobia on the product here. Goes down at 2.7 pounds per acre on 10-inch row spacing. So it's extremely light. It's extremely low bulk density product at 31.5 pounds per cubic foot, which is almost half the weight of some other products on the market, which I'll get into in the coming slides here. So yeah, a little bit more about the strain. Is two highly efficient strain of japonicum that we've introduced, and they are new to the market this past year here. Also comes in 864 pound totes, so that tote will do half section of field. So what's different about our spherical granule with others on the market? What we're seeing is a much more consistent granule size. So that of course leads to better. Someone had a question there? No, maybe not. So that leads to better flowability through application equipment. What we found in a lot of my trials this past year was that some other granular inoculants were being either over applied or under applied. And the reason is that of course farmers calibrate their seeding equipment typically once at the start of seeding, and then sow their 160 or 1,000 acres of peas or soybeans. And what happens is that not all of these granules are consistent in size, and that's where you get all of a sudden you get either over application or under application of equipment. So a lot of feedback from retailers this past year was that I gave 16 bags to a grower for a quarter section, and he wasn't running back to the retail looking for 2 more bags or returning 10 bags weeks after seeding's done, which is always a bit of an inventory nightmare, right? So a more consistent granule placement there. It's manufactured, and we actually screen this product in Sault Ste. Marie, so we have very little dust. And I've got a slide to go into a little bit of detail about that. Granule durability, if you're to roll this granule between your fingers and try to squeeze it, it won't crumble as easy as some other products on the market. So, and that leads to rhizobia survivability as well. If you were to zoom in on this granule, you'd see these tiny little honeycomb structures. And what Chris did this past spring is actually bought a few bags back from a retail in Saskatchewan, and we sent it off to our lab in Saskatoon for testing of rhizobia counts. And what we found is that the rhizobia actually multiplied in the bag as opposed to slowly decaying in the bag. So for peas and lentils, those are produced in September, October. Soybeans, we then move on to soybean granules at our plant and start producing that product in November. So from the time it was packaged in November, went through the whole pipeline and transport to the retail in Saskatchewan, the rhizobia actually multiplied in the bag as opposed to decaying. So that's quite remarkable. What the industry has been facing over the last number of years is trying to get that rhizobia to survive in the bag before it hits the ground. I had a customer that's looking to do some more testing in a greenhouse over the winter here, and he had 1 bag left of trial product, and he's wondering if it's okay to use. So I got him to send a sample to our lab in Saskatoon there, sent it to test for rhizobia counts, and it still met the minimum guarantee of 1 × 10⁸. So a year after production, the rhizobia was still alive in the bag at good levels as well. So a lot of farmers have looked at me and Chris this past year and kind of looked at us with a crazy look in their eye, like, you're telling me to apply this stuff at 2.7 pounds per acre. Am I putting half the rate down of what I'm typically used to? And the answer is no. So again, it's going back to that bulk density. Some clay-based products in the market, it's up to 56 pounds per cubic foot. Ours is 31.5 pounds per cubic foot. And on the right side, we've got a peat-based granule, which is 43 pounds per cubic foot. So these are all 183 grams of product in each jar. And of course, this is showcasing the difference in bulk density there. I actually left these samples in my truck overnight. And what I noticed is there was lots of moisture migration in the jars on the left and right side there. So I just shook them up, and of course the granules would be sticking to the sides of the jar here. I've showed this to a few farmers, and they say that's exactly what I see in my drill in the springtime, is this moisture migration. If they were to leave this product in the tank overnight, or if there was a rain event and they had to shut down for 2 or 3 days, this is what accumulates in their tanks. So again, going back to that honeycomb structure, what it is, it's allowing more surface area for the rhizobia to multiply, and more surface area for air to flow through between these granules here. So what it's actually doing is it's soaking up that moisture and kind of wicking it away like an Under Armour shirt would. Everyone's always interested to see, well, this farmer actually sent me these videos this past spring. He's a farm just south of Winnipeg, and he was using a peat-based granule before, and typically he said, Brenton, usually it'd be like a cloud of dust, and he took a tote of our product here and he was putting it into his John Joe drill. I'll play this video quickly. He was just amazed at how little dust there was in this product here. A lot of farmers are shying away from using totes because for whatever reason it's damaging the granule or compromising it. And a lot of feedback this past year was that farmers had no issues at all using totes in their drill here. A couple guys actually told me they can actually utilize their cameras inside their tank in the drill and see how much inoculant is left over. Again, typically that'd be a cloud of dust. So because of our low bulk density, we're also able to double stack this product as well without damaging it at all. We did a bunch of testing in Sault Ste. Marie last winter, and what we found is by having 40 bags on a pallet and double stacking, we weren't compromising the quality of the product on the top bag of the bottom pallet at all, which can happen with some other products on the market. And then you can see totes in the background there as well, also double stacked. So some third-party data from AgVise laboratories showcasing the difference in dust particles, 0.1% dust in our spherical granule here, which, yes, it is also available for peas, just inoculated with a different strain. Up to 10% dust in some peat-based granulars. And again, the big picture of accuracy and granule placement, we have much fewer granules in that 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter size range. So that's leading to better granule placement here. Rhodesian, a little bit less product, less dust in their product there. So we had a number of trials across Manitoba, Saskatchewan this past year. And so really what we wanted to showcase here is that our product is going to yield just as good as other products on the market. So a lot of them were up against Tag Team and Nodulator, and seeing consistent yield comparisons here. And really we're saving the farmers the hassle of having to deal with granular inoculant that might be clumping in their tank, or reducing the time of having to unplug runs in the middle of seeding when everyone's in a rush to try to get the crop in the ground here. I'll just take a quick second. Does anyone have any questions about that spherical granule? And if you don't, you could always, I guess, shoot me an email or shoot Dave an email and share some questions as well if you want to save it for later. So Lallfix Pro Yield, this is our premium liquid on-seed inoculant for soybeans. 3 modes of action. We have a dual strain Beta-Rhizobia alkanii, and if you haven't heard of alkanii before, it's because it's a brand new species that we've introduced to Western Canada here. basically everything else on the market, including our spherical granule, is Brityrhizobia japonicum. So this is the first time a new species has been introduced to Canada in over 25 years. We also have a third mode of action called Delphia acidivorans, which is a PGPR, plant growth promoting rhizobacteria. And that is a patented microorganism from Lallemand here. Two different package sizing, 400 unit bladder and a 4x100 unit bladder. It's all in one. There's no mixing or anything like that with some extenders. We've actually got those extenders built into the bladder already. So basically extenders are sugars that you add to the inoculant to extend the life of it on the seed. And we've got those sugars built into our product here. Highly concentrated, low application rate. The goal there was just to reduce the total volume of product on soybeans. And with some particular seed treatments out there, the active ingredients are there's quite a bit of those active ingredients, which is increasing the total volume of on the seed. And what we're finding, or what guys treating seed are finding, is that it can lead to bridging in the tank or in their tender unit. So we've concentrated this product to get a lower application rate here. It's also worth mentioning there's 10 billion viable rhizobia per milliliter there, which is quite high. So looking at some tank mixes with seed treatments, this was more for, of course, in Manitoba and in southeast Saskatchewan there, typically soybeans are treated same day or within the same week that they're going to be planted. But out in the eastern Canada, guys are treating in November, putting them into totes and sending them to retail. So it was important for us to get these extended on-seed life, extended on-seed life survivability with particular seed treatments. And we do have an extender as well that you can add to increase it even further. So what are we seeing with this new species of rhizobia? Is more aggressive colonization on the roots, which leads to earlier nodulation. So we're seeing about a week earlier in the springtime and up to a week later in August. So adding about 2 weeks of nodulation to the plant. We're also seeing nodulation on both on the crown and lateral roots. And really, typically you'd see nodulation on the crown root with a non-seed application and nodulation on the lateral roots with an in-furrow application. And the reason is because we've got this Delphia product here that's creating more roots and more root hairs. So what it's doing is pushing this rhizobia further out onto the roots. And of course, during nodulation, what happens is root hairs reach out, kind of curl in, pick up the rhizobia and bring it back into the plant to create the nodule. And because we have more root and more root hairs with the Delphia product, we're seeing an increased number of nodules on the plant as well. We finally have enough data from this past year to add this to the product here. So that Delphia also creates siderophores, and siderophores are iron chelating molecules which help bind and transport iron within the rhizosphere of the plant. So what it does is it helps reduce the IDC symptoms of on soybeans here. So it's not a foolproof method to reduce IDC, but certainly a thunder seed variety with high IDC tolerance in combination with this product will help that soybean get through that flash a little bit faster than it would by itself. So what we could see in this petri dish here is iron chelation occurring there in that circle compared to competitor products on either side there. So, how do you measure that? What Matt Farr and Chase did down in North Dakota this past year is try to quantify that for us. So they took pictures. So this is in the Red River Valley, just in North Dakota, where they have extremely high extreme issues with IDC. Really, if you're not using an IDC tolerant bean, it's not going to grow at all in this kind of soil conditions here. So they took pictures and they used the RGP color spectrum to try to quantify that. So they looked at the difference in greening between the plants, and they were able to come up with this number, 30% average improvement in plant color here. I think it's less of an issue in Manitoba, but it always seems to come up at a few retailers. Farmers are asking, do I need to inoculate if I have a history of soybeans in the field? So this was a field just south of the line in North Dakota. This field had a history of Bradyrhizobia japonicum in the field, and what they did is they split the field here with ProYield. So the dual strain new species with the PGPR on the right, and you can clearly see a pop-up effect here. We're not saying that farmers should double inoculate all the time. They should definitely single inoculate, and it just depends on what kind of conditions are the field. If there's a tight soybean rotation, well, maybe they can just get away with a single inoculation. If their rotation is 4 or 5 crops, well, then maybe they should look at adding something else in the furrow. So some plants that I've dug up here this past summer here in Manitoba, up in Oak River. This was a single strain japonicum product on the right versus the dual strain Elkanii with the PGPR on the right. You can tell that there's an increased amount of surface area of roots, which of course again leads to increased numbers of nodulation. And on this plant, on the plants on the right, we counted anywhere from 5 to 10 more nodules per plant. Again, single strain japonicum on the left with a different product on the market compared to the dual strain PGPR. It's almost like a web of a root system on the bottom there. Again, increased number of nodules, and some notes from the agronomist. Plant height difference throughout the year, and there was a bit of a yield bump as well that I'll get into in some trials in the last slides here. So of course, as everyone's aware, there's so many different variables that go into each crop to relate to yield and to what you might see on the plants, whether it's flowering or nodulation. So sterile petri dishes in a lab setting, a japonicum on the left and the PGPR product, or sorry, ProYield product on the right. And in a lab setting, we saw anywhere from 20 to 40% increase in nodulation. Some trials across Canada, we had about 15 different replicated sites in Ontario and Quebec. And all of my trials in Manitoba here were side-by-sides, and we saw a bit of a yield bump here. So again, that's replicated trials. It takes a lot of work to get this kind of yield data, and seeing some positive numbers on that. We had some product. We had 2 other trials at the University of North Dakota this past year, so conducted by 2 doctors. These were replicated 4 times. And they saw significant yield bumps. So this trial was just looking at a single application on seed. Competitor A, this was actually a check with nothing. B was a product that's currently on the market in Manitoba, and C was as well. And then there was ProYield here with significant increase. This is conducted by Dr. Jasper Thébault. Another doctor conducted the same trial at UND, Dr. Hans Kandel, and again, replicated 4 times. Saw about a 1.2 bushel increase there over the competitor products. Any questions as we're talking about this? I think I'm a little bit ahead of time here, so we've got some time for some questions if anyone wants to go ahead and ask. Again, if you want to shoot Dave or myself an email after, I'd be more than happy to answer those later on. So 2 more products here that were just registered in Canada. So ProYield, I'll mention ProYield was just registered this past May, and this will be our, pardon me, was it May? Yeah, May, and this will be our first full year with the product. That product is $4.20 a unit at SRP, so extremely comparable to some other products on the market. That spherical granule is $13.40. Very comparable to some other manufactured granules on the market. And
Did you
then
say 20 per unit as a retail price?
SRP is $4.20 for Pro Yield.
So what's the margin on that?
So you'd have to reach out to your inoculant supplier and get some prices, and I can put you in touch with some of those guys. Who is that? I can't see who's talking.
West Martins.
Wes, I'll give you a shout after the call. How about that?
Okay, good.
So we have two more products here that were just recently registered in September, which is a liquid in furrow product and a peat on seed product. This is our Lallfix liquid, which is basically it's a value added product compared to Pro Yield. You can put Pro Yield in furrow. It would be quite pricey. So what we did here is strip down Pro Yield a little bit. So single strain Bradyrhizobia alkanii, so that new species that I was talking about for in furrow application here. Again, highly concentrated product, 1 times 10 to the 10, which is 10 billion rhizobia per milliliter of product here. And we have a range for application rates. So we recommend the higher rate for a virgin field or a field that might not have seen soybeans for 5 to 6 years. And then we have a lower application rate for fields that would have had a history of soybeans here. Peat on seed, it's a bit of a smaller market. I think about 6% of beans in Manitoba or for soybeans in Western Canada actually have a peat application. Great option though if farmers want to get something else on the seed and if they're planting soybeans and don't have a liquid kit. Dual strain Bradyrhizobia alkanii for on-seed application here. The peat product is $3 a unit at SRP, and Lallfix liquid ranges from $6.50 to $13 per acre, depending on your row spacing. So, any other questions? That covers our soybean inoculant lineup. Any questions? If I don't get a chance to talk at the end here, thank you very much for everyone who put this webinar on. I really appreciate it. See some familiar faces on the call here. So it's nice to see that. And again, thank you very much for having me on the call here.
Can I just ask quickly? Sorry, guys, I'm slow at this unmuting.
No problem.
Brenton, can you speak to who's carrying the line on here, or?
Yeah. So for
in Manitoba?
for our inoculant portfolio for soybeans, peas, and lentils, we have 2 distributors in Western Canada, and that would be Winfield United and Ag Resource.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Brenton. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot over this a little bit, probably not new for a lot of other guys, but me coming from animal nutrition side, it's been a little bit of eye opener. So thank you so much. You answer all my questions. Thank you. Yeah, definitely, guys. Please reach out to Brenton. You guys are aware of it. I think it's normal technology coming about. So yeah, feel free. Next speaker, as I mentioned earlier, Renato Schmidt. He travel if it's open for in Canada. He usually travel with me a lot around and visiting the people where it needed. So yeah, whether it's in the field or at the bunker, yeah. Thank you, Renato. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Thank Alexis, everybody involved in organizing this webinar. It's always, it never gets old, and talk about silage, I always feel like a particular particularly excited about it. So on this webinar, the goal is just to give like a little introduction on the silage inoculants, you know, what to expect, the results on the beginning of the process, the end of the process, why to use them, and I'll be presenting throughout the slides just the effects or the efficiency of our products on those different phases. So just pretty much just like on our skin that is colonized by like a wide range of microorganisms, the plants in the field, they are also colonized by a wide variety of microorganisms. When we think of the ensiling process, it is a naturally occurring process. So it's one of the questions, well, it happens anyways, why should I inoculate it? So all these microorganisms that are colonized on the plant, when we chop it, we take to the silo, we pack, cover, it will turn silage some way, somehow. So we're bringing all these different microorganisms, and the dominant microbial species is the one that's gonna direct the fermentation. Now, the problem is we just don't have beneficial or, you know, good microbes, if you will. It's pretty much a microbial war that happens during the ensiling process. So we have these, you know, what I call the good guys that are, these are like the main players that I'm listening here. So it's the lactic acid bacteria that can be classified as heterofermentative and homofermentative. This is underlined and I'll explain why the next slide. And we also have the, you know, bad guys. And this is just like a very short list of these bad guys. We got these fungi, the yeast, molds, also enterobacteria. They are always present in the very, very early stage of ensiling. Clostridia, that can just be a nightmare, especially in haylage. And this slide just show why it's important to start everything with a dominant homolytic fermentation. So we have these different types of fermentation on this table, and there is the theoretical recovery of dry matter on the process, on the main process of these different bacteria or the yeast. So when we think of the homolytic bacteria, for example, species like Pediococcus pentosaceus or Lactobacillus plantarum, they will use simple sugars, glucose, fructose, they have like 6 carbons, and convert straight to lactic acid. That's 3 carbons. So this will have 2 molecules. And it's a direct conversion. There is no loss of dry matter, and the recovery is theoretically 100%. So this is the most efficient conversion. And in addition to that, the lactic acid is a very strong acid. And this will lead to that fast, efficient drop on the pH, and we're gonna pickle everything. Now, the heterofermentative or heterolactic bacteria, they are also beneficial. They are just not as efficient as the homofermentative because they will produce lactic acid, but they also produce other metabolites, you know, for instance, mannitol, acetic acid, ethanol, and we're going to lose a little bit on the dry matter as a form of CO2. Now, if we look at these 2 bottom lines here on the table with fermentation from a yeast or a Clostridia, then they're basically just going to be destroying some of these nutrients, the residual sugars, the organic acids, and produce some not really desirable metabolites, especially when we think of a Clostridial fermentation. We see butyric acid that can lead to some ketosis. There's a lot of protein degradation, production of biogenic amines, some really, really nasty compounds like cadaverine, histamine, putrescine. And we look at the recovery of dry matter in this process, about half it's gone. So these are just like not wanted at all. And I think still like based on the previous slide, this is one reason why we should inoculate. We have no idea what type of microbes are coming from the field, if we have just some beneficial microbes, or we're just gonna be with a high load of these bad guys. And it's just like a very inexpensive insurance policy, if you will. And if, for example, you have a luck, for example, of bringing all good microbes, you can always make a good fermentation better. You can always improve on the dry matter or nutrient retention. So this brings us to the goals of making good quality silage, starting from, of course, a high quality forage. It's divided in two. First, the front end that we called is that phase of early ensiling or active fermentation for rapid preservation and maximum recovery of nutrients, dry matter, minimize the activity of aerobic microbes. And in the back end, we want some great storage and feed out characteristics. So that means what we call, the good shelf life or aerobic stability. You hear me speak about aerobic stability, and this is basically just the hours or the amount of time the silage remains fresh or cool during feed out or during exposure to air. So the longer the time, of course, the better, without any issues with heating or spoilage. So we start with the front end. And the inoculants, they can help achieve, both of these goals. So how we can improve the front end? As I mentioned, we can always make the fermentation more efficient. So just have a faster rate on the pH drop. We can just shut down also the plant enzymes. They will be more sensitive to the low pH. And that's the same with the bad fermentations. Like Clostridia, it's sensitive to a pH around 4.5. So it's just having a good, clean, efficient fermentation to maximize the preservation of dry matter, protein, and energy. And once we have a good fermentation, this here in the bottom, these are like the two products from our new Magniva line, and they're focused more on this phase of the ensiling process. So we have a stronger effect on the homofermentative pattern of fermentation for the classic, as well for the silver. And once we have this enhanced fermentation, the result is a better recovery or lower losses in terms of dry matter. This table is a compilation of different studies that were done, different research institutions. Everything was independently researched. 3 different crops with the corn silage, haylage, or barley silage. And when we look at the losses of a silage that was untreated versus a silage that was treated, there is always a positive response. There's always a positive outcome. As I said, you can always improve a fermentation. And sometimes it's hard to just say a particular figure. The magnitude of response will vary, of course. On this first line, we can see there was a difference of 1.2 percentiles. So it's like, it doesn't sound a whole lot. But then, a couple of lines below, the difference was 8.2 points of a better recovery of dry matter. So in the end, this average was 4.7. When I got asked and I talk about this point, I normally I like to be more conservative and use like a 4 point as an improved dry matter recovery if you use a front-end inoculant. So then you can just think what's the price of the ton corn silage or the silage, whatever you are in your neck of the woods, and what these 4 points will represent in terms of the inoculant cost. And normally it's at least like a 2 or 3 to 1, at the very least. And remember, we're just talking about dry matter recovery. We always forget about the nutrient recovery during the process of spoilage. The really good stuff, amino acid, organic acids, sugars, they will go first. So normally we end up with less material of lower quality when it's not inoculated. This is a study that was done with grass silage that was very, very wet, 22% dry matter. And it's just to show that we've been hearing a lot about Clostridia fermentation, and there are some products that are, quote unquote, specific to control Clostridia. And I guess in the end of the day, Clostridia, they're sensitive to pH. all you need is an efficient front-end fermentation to inhibit them. On this study, we see the early stage of ensiling here on the left. The drop on pH of that haylage that was treated was a lot faster. It was below 5 at, I think, like 3 days of ensiling. The one that was not treated, it took a while to cross that pH 5. That's when we start seeing that inhibition of microbes and shutting down some of the plant enzymes. This label that's PP12455, it's the strain of homolytic bacteria that we have on all of our products, and specifically on the Magniva Classic and the Magniva Silver. Still, on this table here on the right, it's the final time opening, that's 60 days of storage. And we look at this of these parameters, and the one that was inoculated had a lower pH, so it maintained that stability. It had a higher level of protein, lower amount of ammonia nitrogen. So the ammonia nitrogen is kind of like a thermometer of protein degradation. Higher ammonia, you get less of the true protein. Improved dry matter, organic matter digestibility. Dry matter recovery, there is a 10-point percentile of improved, and this alone is huge. And we look here in the final lane, butyric acid, the one that was not treated, the haylage had 2.3% of butyric acid. So it pretty much indicates that it went big time Clostridium. Now, there is like a little issue when we work with this homolytic fermentation or homolytic inoculants. The low pH alone, just a low pH, does not inhibit the growth of spoilage yeast during feed out. So once it's exposed to air, this yeast will, let's say, wake up, and just the low pH will not stop them. In fact, they can use the lactic acid as a food source. So you got a little catch-22 here. We want that lactic acid in the beginning, is really important. But then when you open the silo, this can come back and become a big issue to us. So the yeast will initiate this process of aerobic deterioration. And when we think of the back end, we just need something else. We need something that's going to stop the growth of yeast, which cause basically start all the heating events in silages. So when we think of some type of chemical or additive to stabilize the silage or the TMR, the first compound that comes to mind, it's the propionic acid. Now, acetic acid, it's also a good, strong acid in terms of antifungal properties. These are like a few research studies that I put together from my time in grad school. And we see that as the level of acetic acid increases, the population of yeast starts to go down. And subsequently, there is an improvement in aerobic stability. So we have more hours of a cool, fresh feed. Now, one way to produce acetic acid in the silage is with this unique lactic acid bacterium. It's called Lactobacillus buchneri 4788. So it will produce moderate amounts of acetic acid, inhibit the population of yeast and molds, lead to an improved shelf life or aerobic stability. And in the end, we have less dry matter, also less nutrient losses during storage, feed out, and we maintain the animal performance. There are some particularities about this organism, the Lactobacillus buchneri. We see a lot of our competitors with different strain of L. buchneri. And most of these commercial formulations, they have, let's say, a lower dose than the one that we sell. So normally when we think of the microbial inoculants, the standard, it's about 100,000 colony forming units, CFUs per gram of fresh forage in terms of application rate. And just the Buchneri alone, for our products, we apply a high dose that when you see here on the table, it's 400,000 CFUs per gram. So it's just a different bacterium, it's a different type of metabolism. And we just need that extra amount of bacteria to have a consistent effect. This table, it's a meta-analysis of 26 published manuscripts, and it's simplified. I didn't put, of course, all the data because it would be too busy, but it just showed the difference of using a low-dose Buchneri versus a high-dose Buchneri. So we're looking for a conversion of small amounts of lactic acid to acetic acid. That's how it works. On the low dose of Buchneri, we see there's like a small increase on the amount of acetic acid and a numerical increase in the amount or hours of aerobic stability. Now, when we put together the studies done with the high dose of Buchneri, there was a much more massive conversion of lactate to acetate, and the improvement in aerobic stability is just huge. It's 20 times higher than the untreated, and a lot higher than the low dose. So it's one of the things like, oh, the low dose doesn't work at all. You know, it's not really that doesn't work, but you see lower amount of hours on average, and also I think you would get like a lot more of complaint calls, to be honest, because inconsistency, it's kind of like a big factor. Okay, so we talked about,
can I just
yep.
break in there for a second? I think the importance also of that last slide is that there are other products on the market that have Buchnerized, usually a different strain, as you say, and also that lower rate. So
Yes.
competitively, there can be other Buchnerized out there, but they are not at the same rate as this, and they are not this same one. So that also speaks to, you're not going to see another product with this kind of strength.
Yep, exactly. So you have the strength difference and the application rate. Now, I talk about the front end. We had the bacterium that was that Pediococcus pentosaceus 12455. I talk about the Lactobacillus buchneri 4788. Then we just, well, if you got the, you know, in our collection, the best for one process and the best for another process, why not put them together? So we ended up with this other product called Magnesia Titanium. So we have the effect on the front end of the process, also on the feed-out stability. And one point that I'm still gonna touch, it's all of our products, they have an enzyme combination. So it's an enzyme cocktail primarily to produce some extra sugars for our bacteria to make sure that we have a fermentation. You know, it doesn't matter if you have like the best bacterial strain, you know, it's like you have like a Ford F-150 Raptor and the fuel tank is empty. So we have to make sure that there will be some sugars for the fermentation. This is a study just comparing the like untreated Buchneri by itself and the combo product. That's why, you know, the researcher called the LBC, that's the Magnesia Titanium. And this is alfalfa. We see the early, like the first week of fermentation, the pH drop, it's very slow on the untreated. You know, the alfalfa, it's a lot more challenged to ferment than corn. We have a lot more protein, organic acids, a little lower level of sugars. So it's a little less insoluble, let's say. And the samples that were treated with just Buchneri, you see there was an improvement here. So as I said, the heterofermentative, which Buchneri is, they are beneficial. They're just not the most efficient. So we saw this effect from the Buchneri alone, and the best one was with the combination product. So then the question was, well, is this going to have any type of a deleterious effect on the Buchneri? Then I put together, I had like 5 different studies during my PhD. And when we look at the aerobic stability, it was exactly the same putting together all these different studies. So there was no interference or any antagonism of putting Buchneri with the front-end bacterium, with the Pediococcus. This is one study that we did with the BMR corn, and it's something that I did a study, and I was just a grad student at the time. I didn't have any tie with Lallemand, and I was just like let's say a silage nerd. And once we opened an experiment, we were doing just research for the company, and everything turned out so nice. I just had to take a picture, and I never thought I'd be using this. But anyways, I have the 4 lab scale silos that were untreated, and we see there's like molding all around these wraps, by the rims, where there's a little bit of air that just seeps in, and it's enough for microbe activity. And on the right, the picture on the right, everything that was treated with the titanium formulation, it was just nice and clean. So it was just beautiful. So as I was saying, we talk about this dry matter recovery. This is a study that was done in ag bag, so it's a farm scale study, and we looked at feed out losses, not just the fermentation losses. So in this corner side, we see the untreated had 4.4 higher losses, 4.4 percentiles higher losses than the titanium. And when you start looking at the end product, the final silage that was being fed, it had higher losses. The untreated had higher losses of crude protein and gross energy. So as I said, not only are you going to end up with less silage, but also of a lower quality. And here on the bottom, it's just show the culprits, the spoilage yeast. You see the population of yeast over 4 million or versus 13,500, and pH of the treated silage, it's still nice, low, and stable. As I mentioned, just to go a little quick on the enzymes, the lactic acid bacteria, they need simple sugars for the fermentation. They are not good to use starch or any other complex carbohydrates. So our formulations, they basically target that hemicellulose fraction just to produce a little bit of sugars, just in case. And one of the situations was in northern Wisconsin. We had a study that was done with Dave Combs fairly recently. This was alfalfa, was a baleage, 41% dry matter, was done in October, late October, very cloudy day, photosynthetic activity was pretty low. We look at everything, protein, ash, everything looks good, but then soluble sugars, a little over 1%. That's very little. So we treated with nothing for the negative control. We treated with the Magniva Classic. And after 108 days, we see the difference, much lower pH, much higher, 20 times higher amount of lactic acid produced. And when you think that you have 1% of sugars, where did the substrate come from? There's nothing, that can explain this other than the enzyme activity and a very nice synergistic effect with the bacteria. And just like a much nicer and even like cleaner feed with yeast and mold populations that were not detectable during the plating. And also there is like a little perk when you use this enzyme cocktail. This study was done with the cocktail that's a little more robust on the silver and the titanium formulations. And we saw an increase of 4 points on the NDFD, on the fiber digestibility. So it's, the primary goal is to feed the bacteria from the inoculant formulation, but then we also, it softens up some of the fiber and leads to an improved on the fiber digestibility, which, it's really nice. So in summary, all of our inoculants, they have a front-end fermenter. As I said, we can always improve the fermentation, leads to more retention of dry matter, of nutrients. The Magniva, the silver, and the titanium, they can also enhance some feed digestibility and aerobic stability of silage, especially titanium, for a maximum feed quantity and quality. The inoculants should not be used in place of good silage management. All the phases, when you start with the proper maturity, dry matter content, chop length, packing density, all those phases, they are equally important. So the inoculants, they are not a substitute for a good management. And finally, the correct application rates of viable organisms is critical to success. So these are live organisms. So you have to make sure that, you know, they are alive to do their job. So they're very sensitive to sunlight, to heat. If the water inoculant mix in the tank goes above like 90 degrees, we should try to cool it down some way, somehow, with some frozen soda bottles or something. Not leave the product on the dashboard, you know, things like that. And my final slide is just, you know, what we should expect from the 3 different products. I didn't have time to go over like details on formulations, but we have all this type of information. We have sell sheets. Tends to have all the types of information, not only on products, but also on silage management, silage safety. We had like a lot of resource that's all available. So just a recap on the classic. It's basically the entry level with the front-end fermentation. We also have the enzyme package. Feed-out stability basically is nothing. Silver, it's a little better on the front end. That's the best organism we have, full dose. Actually a stronger enzyme package and a strain of propionic acid bacteria that helps with the feed-out stability. And the titanium, as I said, we got the best that we can offer for the front end, enzyme package, and the Buchner effect during the feed-out. So this is what I had to present. We're still, you know, always available to any questions, any troubleshoot, even like in the future, or you have like a fermentation analysis you need to, you know, to get my 2 cents and write a report, you know, anything that we can help, you're here.
Renato, I got a quick question for you.
Okay.
In the last couple of years, between the drought and some early frost that we had, seemed to have a chronic problem with custom choppers showing up late or having to chop dry corn. How do your products help, or where would they be used in that case?
On the drought, you have like a lower population of lactic acid bacteria. So right off the bat, you're helping with the fermentation. Depending how stressed the plant is, then you might have some issues with just bringing more of that undesirable microbes. So I think the Buchneri would be beneficial. But the front-end fermenter that we have on all of our products, it's very important, especially when we think of the nitrate levels that, you know, it's a concern on drought stress forage. And an efficient fermentation can reduce the nitrate levels about 40%. Now, just when it's like really cold, and if you have some issues with, you know, frozen lines or tips on the applicator, you can mix with the antifreeze, like the RV grade, with propylene glycol, all the way up to 10%. You can mix with the water inoculant solution. So probably start like a little lower, 2-3%, and, you know, just work all the way to 10% if necessary. And that has no issue with the viability of the bacteria.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Renato. Also, a quick point that I should put out just for some of the dealers here who've actually worked with these products in the past. As you can see from Renato's presentation, there was a name change. And so if you were used to seeing or knowing the Biotel name, it is the exact same product or products. They just have had a new name change. So you heard him speaking of the Buchneri. Well, that's the titanium product, and the Biotel Plus is the silver, and the Super Sol is the classic. So nothing has changed in the package, just the picture on the package and the name has changed itself. And you pointed to some of it, Renato. I do just want to say, just because I've traveled a number of fields in Manitoba through my days, and as you heard Renato say, and you can provide this if ever asked to anybody you're selling to, silage piles and bunks should not heat. They should not melt snow. They should be covered. If the cover blows off, it should be replaced. And if they're seeing a lot of liquid runoff or a lot of shrinkage and saying, oh, it's just settling, no, it's not. It's the product's breaking down. When you see molds and yeasts that can be white, that can be pink, that's really not good. If you're smelling it and the guys are saying, oh, it doesn't, the cows will just eat it up. Yes, some of it they will, but they will be affected by it. And as Renato stated, the quality loss will absolutely, the quality loss in the dry matter will absolutely be seen either in the milk tank or on the cattle that you're trying to put meat on. Okay. It's my job to say thank you, and I want to do that. Thanks so much to David for bringing this forward and trying to get some people hearing about the product line. I appreciate that very much. Thanks so much to all of the Lallemand crew for coming through on this. Brenton and Renato, both of them can be contacted. If you want to contact Dave, he's got their contact information. That might be the easiest and direct, or if you want to contact me, I can as well. And as you know, it has been recorded. I'm throwing all of these on my website just to have them there. I've had a couple of them outside of this, and so David can get those links and provide that as well. With regards to the soybeans, you heard Winfield and Ag Resource are locations for that. And yeah, anybody, I'm sort of handling the Viatel forage side of things. So if you want more information on that, come hit me up or hit David up and come my way. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you for joining, and thanks for the information. It was fantastic.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Bye now.
Okay, see you everyone.
Bye-bye.